Now it is visible.
Yes, it is visible, sir. This is full screen.
विजिबल हो गया.
Visible.
ये full screen है, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning to all of you, and very hearty welcome of this special occasion, that is National Statistics Day 2021. And I especially thank Professor Dwivedi for bringing out several issues on this particular day, particularly for the youngsters, those who are organizing this program. And at the outset, I make a special mention to all my colleagues, Professor K.K. Singh, Professor Brajesh Singh, and the entire student community and faculty at my Department of Statistics in Banaras Hindu University for organizing this nice program. We all know that this program is planned to celebrate very important aspect of statistics in this country, and at the occasion of the birthday of our nation's father of statistics, Shamchandra Mahalanobis. A lot of things have been talked about Professor Mahalanobis, his history, his biography, his contribution to statistics, and a lot of things are available. So I have made a brief sketch in a statistical form, in a tabular form, about P.C. Mahalanobis, his birth, his parents, his residence, his field, his alma mater, doctoral advisor, and some prominent students he guided. So this table gives you a brief sketch of Professor P.C. Mahalanobis and his work. But you cannot concise such a great personality in one table. Definitely, I have made some effort that how statistics uses a huge data and presents in a table. So I tried to consolidate this huge personality in one table, but I think I could not succeed. There are a lot more things about Mahalanobis to know, and as you read, you will be able to delight it by reading his work, by reading his biography. If you look at the history of this particular day, this started, I think, 15 years back in 2007. And every year there was a theme assigned to this particular day. Initially, it was an official function organized by government, particularly people in cadre of Indian Statistical Services and the organizations like NSSO, CSO, Vital Registration System, Census Organization. I am audible to all of you? I'm audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And later on, this function expanded to academic and research institutions like we are doing it. When the celebration of National Statistics Day started, hardly any academic institution was participating, and people were thinking that this is a program for people who are in official statistics. Now, after the formation of a special ministry called Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, the ministry has established some awards in the name of Professor Mahalanobis, Mr. C.R. Rao Award for young statisticians, and a national asset invitation for students. So now it has covered a wider range of people, those who are practicing statistics. Theme of this year was taken from Sustainable Development Goal 2, which was set by UN. All of you know that it was a Millennium Development Goal, and when we could not complete it by the time frame, we modified it. Everybody agreed that it should be a Sustainable Development Goal, and now we have started a new journey in the name of Sustainable Development Goal. And the current theme for this year was End Hunger, Achieve Food Security, and Improve Nutrition and Sustainable Agriculture. I think most of the government program might have centered around this, but now this is time, as I feel, that it started from official statistics domain, has come to general statistical institutions and academia and research. Now the time is that we should expand this program to general public. Only then the acceptance of statistics and its importance will be realized throughout the country or throughout the globe. There is no doubt about that. Statistics is in every walk of life that we have. If you go by the definition of statistics, it's a collection, compilation, interpretation, and drawing meaningful inference from a data. So whatever you do in your life, first of all, you collect some information. You analyze, may not be using some statistical tools, but you analyze this data using your intelligence, using your own brain, and then you take a conscious decision that is called inference. So the nature has given an inherent property in each and every individual, maybe literate or maybe illiterate, to appreciate statistics in decision making in his or her life. So it's such a nice subject, I will say that everyone is using this subject for decision making. If one is a very illiterate or less literate, the problem may be small. If you are very illiterate and very straightforward, very dynamic, your problems may be a little bigger. But if you are a researcher, if you are a policy maker, your problems will be much, much bigger, and accordingly these statistical tools are applied to solve these problems. So in this journey, when you discuss various aspects of statistics, a new emerging area, which is called artificial intelligence. We all have intelligence, we apply this intelligence to solve a problem, but with the advent of technology, with the advent of computers, with the advent of communication tools and internet, the horizon and the scope of knowledge sharing and complex problems has increased tremendously. And fortunately or unfortunately, I witnessed that we were in the generation which has seen these changes rapidly. When we joined the department where this program is being organized, it was, I will say that, state-of-art education in the statistics at that time. And for data analysis, we used to have punch card system, and we used to analyze and tabulate our data using a punch card system. While staying in that department, the computers came, and the department had the first PC, I think, in early 80s or late 70s, I don't remember the year, and still I was in that department as a student. And I was given this task to start that personal computer, and it was not like today's computer. It was coming with 2 floppy drives. In one floppy drive, you have your operating system and some programs, and in the other floppy drive, you can have your data and output and whatever you do using those programs. And it was a DOS-based system. The first example that I tell you in my life, and today you can call it as artificial intelligence. I was a little bit keen about learning, and it was a basic programming that came with that floppy disk. And with my teachers at that time, Professor Bhattacharya, Professor R.C. Yadav, and other senior teachers, we were trying how to use this computer. And then I had an idea to write a small program that if you put your name, put your age, put your some of the qualifications, and ask whether I'm suitable for computer learning. And everybody tried this program, and everybody was putting this information in the computer as an input. And the response of computer was coming, and I programmed in such a way that it had 3 responses. One was, you are excellent for computer learning. Then you have to try very hard for computer learning. And the third response was that you are too old to learn computers. And I think Professor K.K. Singh knows this story. For one of my friends, close friends, I put his name in the category that you are too old to learn computers. Whenever he was putting his information, the computer was saying that you are too old to learn computers. And everybody was laughing at this, that why the computer is saying, everyone, you are welcome, you are very good to learn computers. And what about you? That computer knows that you are too old to learn computers. And that was a very, very kidding exercise. And today you can say that it was a very basic thing that we do in artificial intelligence. So with this small exercise, we started the journey of computing in statistics, and now we are reaching to various levels of our learning and other exercises. Just excuse me for a moment. बस यहाँ पे ठीक. Okay, thank you for waiting. So in today's agenda, that was a beginning and that was a funny note about how we started using computers. And now you can solve various complex problems using these computers and using your programming skills. And the agenda for today's presentation, we have these 5 important points: that what are the fundamentals of artificial intelligence, what are the common statistical tools that are used in artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence system and the type of data which is being used, application of artificial intelligence, particularly in healthcare, the area which is my bread and butter, and the common diseases which are being targeted by artificial intelligence these days. So these are the focus points, and you might have learned about this particular term which has been coined as artificial intelligence, and I think that it's a only catchy word that is being used by various domains. There is nothing like artificial intelligence. It is everything, all the intelligence that computer has been pushed by human beings, by experts, by various knowledge domains. But yes, it's retrieval, its analysis has been expedited by using this technology. And if you look at the term intelligence, it is not only artificial intelligence. Wherever statistics is being used as a background tool and the decision making, a term intelligence has been used. You might have heard about business intelligence, the word business intelligence. You might have heard about word health intelligence. There is a division in Ministry of Health that is called Central Bureau of Health Intelligence, and that is all about of health statistics. But the term intelligence is used. So if you talk about intelligence, what is intelligence and what it refers to, the whole cognitive abilities required to obtain knowledge and use it to solve problems that have well-described goal and structure. The intelligence should have ability to understand, reason, make proper judgment, and update itself. In humans, intelligence is commonly measured using Binet and Simon scale, alpha beta test, and Webster IQ scale, which is giving you the average 100. So these are the measurements of intelligence, human intelligence, and IQ scores and all those things you may be knowing. The term intelligence, brilliance, genius, clever are common terms to represent human cognitive functions. You will say that someone is very brilliant. Oh, what an intelligent person. What a genius person. So all these common English words refer to intelligence of a person, but they have little difference and they present different dimensions of individuals and their behavior. The artificial intelligence that we will be talking in subsequent slides is a simulation of human intelligence process by machines, especially computer systems. And these processes include particularly 3 things. One is the learning, as the human mind does. When we are child, we start picking up various things, and when we grow, we learn of things. So some way, this artificial intelligence also requires learning. That means acquisition of data and rules. Is the learning process for artificial intelligence in computers. Reasoning, use of rule for decision making. And third one is a self-correction, to account for errors. If some error has been committed in decision making, how to make corrections using these errors. If you classify this artificial intelligence, there are two more wide categories. One is called weak AI or narrow AI. Weak artificial intelligence or narrow artificial intelligence. This type of artificial intelligence system is designed to only perform a particular task. For example, if you have a Google Assistant, you put certain queries and the Google Assistant answers. But if you put a problem which is beyond the scope of this particular system, you will not get your answer. and sometimes the answers are limited, and at the end, you are asked whether you are satisfied with the solution that has been provided or not. So that is called a weak AI, and which has fixed questions and fixed answers. And if you ask those questions, the computer will guide you and will give you certain answers to those questions. And the second is a strong AI. This typical artificial intelligence is also referred as artificial general intelligence. This type of AI system is capable of reasoning when it is presented with a challenge, and it can derive solutions without human intervention. So it is programmed in such a way that it can move on for finding out solutions and challenges even without human intervention. If you look at the total classification, there are three major groups. People call it artificial intelligence. Then you will get another subset, which is called machine learning. And then you have another subset, which is called deep learning. So if you, in a statistical term, if you see that artificial intelligence is the biggest set, the machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, and the deep learning is further subset of machine learning. So the total artificial intelligence can be categorized into these three categories. So we have deep learning very much in our statistics, and we have machine learning to some extent, algorithms that improve the performance using the more data, and there are subsets of artificial intelligence. But I think one thing is very surprising, that what are the tools of artificial intelligence that are used in the practice behind these funny jobs which are being done by the computers. And I tried to make classification of these tools into three major categories. One is the tools that come from statistics and analytics domain. The other one is the tools which are coming from bio-inspired systems. And the third one is a tool which is coming from logical reasoning. And if you look at these three arms, the statistical and analytics arm is the heaviest arm, and the tools which are being used in artificial intelligence, like linear regression, logistic regression, discriminant analysis, naive-Bayes networks, random forests, support vector machines, nearest neighbor analysis, decision tree, hidden Markov process. So all these tools are very much existing in the statistics theory, and students of statistics are learning all these things, though some of these are at the very advanced level, and people, when go for research, they get introduced for these methods, and some of them are primary level, which are introduced at graduate and postgraduate level. And when you go for bio-inspired systems, we classify a system called neural network, and people say that this is a bio-inspired system. But I have a little bit apprehension about neural network. Neural network is also a collection of regression processes with little bit modification. And if you see the procedures which are depicted here in red, on these I have my reservation that they also come under the statistical and analytic tools. But generally the people in artificial intelligence area classify them in logical reasoning and bio-inspired system. But genetic algorithm, progeny clustering, rule and knowledge base, fuzzy logic, they are exclusively out of statistics domain to my understanding. So what I wanted to emphasize here, the artificial intelligence is a big way and very latest development in the computational aspects and cutting edge technology. But if you look at the background, most of the tools and the theory that is being used in artificial intelligence comes from statistics. So I would like to make a point that why you as a student of statistics cannot venture into artificial intelligence if you have some coding skill and understanding of computer, which is much, much easier than these tools. If somebody asks you that you learn the theory of logistic regression, linear regression, or discriminant analysis, or you learn some programming language, probably most of you can learn programming language, those who are not statisticians. But if you are not a statistician, you will find very difficult to learn these statistical tools which are in dominance in the artificial intelligence applications. So, in nutshell, the statisticians have a very bright scope to turn up their applications into the area of artificial intelligence, provided they have some domain expertise where you want to apply these artificial intelligence. And the platforms which are being used for coding and programming is Python, TensorFlow, C, C++, and MATLAB. So again, when I looked at this list, I think the Python is one of the common programming languages which most of the statistical students in statistics are using. Maybe TensorFlow, I do not know whether TensorFlow is being used in statistics. C and C++ is again a very common language, and MATLAB is also equally popular among students of statistics. So the platform that is being used for artificial intelligence, you are well aware about most of the platforms, and you are well aware about the tools which are being used. But the area has been taken up by the computer scientists that they are the leaders in the artificial intelligence. But on this particular day, on the National Statistics Day, I will urge that most of the bright students of our department and other institutions, those who are expert in Python, C++, and MATLAB, and those who are expert in those fundamental tools of artificial intelligence from the statistics domain, they can explore their career and they can do pioneering work in the artificial intelligence group. Now I'm coming with some of the applications in my own area, how artificial intelligence is playing a very important role in the healthcare industry. So if you look at the healthcare industry itself, lot of data acquisition and intelligence guided techniques and machines are available, which are handling massive amount of clinical decision making job. So if you look at role of artificial intelligence, these are the important things that if the artificial intelligence comes to healthcare as an assisting clinicians in their clinical practice, improving the accuracy of healthcare, updating the medical information, and minimizing human errors, and giving them advanced risk alerts. What you cannot predict right now with a particular medication, what will happen to a patient, this artificial intelligence can predict and give advanced alert to the clinicians that if you are doing this medication, in future, these are the probable outcomes. To adopt artificial intelligence in healthcare applications, they need to train the system on a real data to learn association between the feature of the patients, treatment, interventions, and outcome of interest and complications, etc. And these clinical data are often generated from clinical activities like screening, like diagnosis, like treatment, etc. And they exist in the following forms. If you look at the clinical data hospitals, a part of data is generated in alphanumeric structure like demographics of a patient, laboratory investigations, measurement of blood pressure, temperature, treatment cost, etc. And you have some signs and symptoms, physical examination, diseases. So these are unstructured alphanumeric data, which are written as a plain text. Then you have static images, like you have X-rays, you have magnetic resonance imaging data, you have CT scan data, you have ultrasound, you have various kind of thermographs, and these are called static image data, which is generated in clinical practice. And then you have some dynamic image data like cardioangiographs, nuclear scans, Doppler scans, and you have some part of audio data, which are stethoscopic observations, bowel movements, breathings, snorings, etc. So when we are students of statistics, for us the data means a number, and the number is classified into two categories, whether it is a qualitative or quantitative, or you say that is a numerical data or non-numerical data, and accordingly you apply your statistical tools. But when you come to the healthcare industry, you find that the data may be alphanumeric that you are taught, the data may be unstructured alphanumeric text, the data may be an image, data may be a dynamic image, or the data may be a sound or audio data. So when you are given this challenge, how to handle this kind of data, then you need a special kind of skill that yes, there is a programming skill, there is a machine learning skill that can handle all kind of data together to have a meaningful decision, because in clinical care, all this data work together, and as a human being, you have to analyze all this data and give a conclusion. So this is much more challenging than the data that we use in statistical exercises in our labs and in our research. This is a roadmap for artificial intelligence in healthcare. You have data, these are the data, electronic medical record format, image format, and you can generate all this data, and then the data is collected by clinicians using diagnosis and treatment, and then this data flows from here, the clinical notes in natural language. Then you need a natural language processing engine, which can further go into machine learning, and from here also it goes to a machine learning, and then you get an output, which is the clinical activity. So this is a circle of roadmap that how you can process clinical data using artificial intelligence. There are certain standards for defining this data. One is the International Classification of Diseases, WHO ICD-10 data, and this classifies the diseases, injuries, and all those things, and they provide a specific code for a specific disease, and the problem of most of the text description is solved using this particular feature. Then you have another standard which is called HL7 or Health Level 7. This is the standard language for the electronic interchange of clinical, financial, and administrative information between healthcare systems. Like if you have some equipment, and from this equipment you want to transmit this information into another equipment or into another equipment or into another program or into another system, then these should be compatible with HL7 codes, and the data will be interpreted and transmitted from one place to the another place following this particular standard, which is called HL7. And if you have images, a lot of images you use in the daily routine, like one of the images, a JPG image, which you use in your presentation or elsewhere. But in a clinical scenario, most of the images are in the DICOM format. And this DICOM format is a very, very popular format. So your clinical system must be compatible with the DICOM format. And the other standard is called HIPAA standard, which is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This gives you a proper narration or proper wording for a particular procedure, and which is linked with the treatment cost. Otherwise, for the same procedure, if you write a different word and charge differently, the entire insurance system gets affected. So therefore, you have the costing of the treatment, they have this HIPAA standard. So using these four kind of standards, most of the data generated in healthcare is streamlined, and that can be used for processing by any system, or particularly for artificial intelligence systems. Now, if you look at the application of artificial intelligence system in healthcare, I have classified all these things. So most of the application is in the diagnostic imaging. The artificial intelligence tools are primarily used in diagnostic imaging, The second one is in the area of genetics, and third one is electrodiagnosis. The other ones for monitoring, for disability evaluation, for mass screening, or for other application, the quantum of artificial intelligence is very less. And these are the areas which are barren, and one can pick up and expand the scope of artificial intelligence in healthcare into these areas, and that gives a very big scope of new inventions in the area of healthcare and role of artificial intelligence. And if you look at the tools that are commonly used in healthcare, the artificial intelligence, whatever is being used in healthcare, these are two important parts. If you look at this blue one of this pie chart, it is support vector machine, which comes from the statistical domain, and the other one is a neural network, which comes from bio-sponsored system, or primarily from statistics and multivariate modeling. And the others are logistic regression, discriminant analysis. So all the tools that I said, but there is very little information on other tools like fuzzy logic, which are non-statistical. And you see that most of the statistical tools which are being used are in dominance in the artificial intelligence in healthcare, and I do not know what is happening in other sectors. So these are the specific applications for artificial intelligence, like workflow automation of a healthcare system, or image analysis for a diagnosis of a healthcare system like MRI and CT scanning, or genomics in lab diagnostics, artificial intelligence and most of the genomic data that's being used, sequencing and all those things. Artificial intelligence in robots, which is a very upcoming area, that robotics in the healthcare system is coming in a big way, though very expensive, but it is also controlled by artificial intelligence using these principles which I discussed. So when you look at an equipment and see that it is performing in a non-imaginative way, from a distance a surgeon can operate on a body, but behind that what is driving it is the technique that you learn in the statistical classroom, with the technique that you learn in your computer programming classes. These days, this is a very upcoming new area, which is remote patient monitoring. The artificial intelligence is coming out. These are all internet-based tools, and you can use them at home. You can monitor, and the doctors can monitor a patient, even the patient is lying in his bedroom, and they can record the ECG, they can record the heart rate and other kind of measurements from home. And even there are a lot of gadgets which are wearable, and one can wear these gadgets and the information is sent to the systems in the hospitals, and they can advise the patients at home. And the telemedicine is one of them, which is very promising application of reaching to your door, how the healthcare can reach your door using these techniques. Virtual nursing assistant. These days, the problems of senior citizens and old age people is coming to a very critical situation all over the world. Hardly they have any assistance nearby. They are not capable of moving to the hospital when they need some assistance. So these kind of devices and gadgets, it are placed around these senior citizens, those who are not able to move quickly to the hospital or don't get assistance at their door. Using these virtual nursing assistant, using these wearable devices, the healthcare can reach to them immediately. Artificial intelligence in dose error reduction. Most of the healthcare industry is facing the challenge which is called error in dosimetry. It is believed that dose-related errors constitute up to 37% of all preventable medical errors. When a clinician is treating a patient, he may commit error, and the most common error is the dose corrections, that either the patient is being given overdosed or the patient has been underdosed, and these kind of errors can be corrected using artificial intelligence, and you can, before giving the dose to the patient and using these approaches of the standard curves, you can define what is the optimum dose or what is the tolerable dose that can be given to a patient, and your dose can be negotiated within that limit. The artificial intelligence in drug discovery, as Dr. Dwivedi told about the clinical trials and all those things, the bigger component of drug trial and all those things is now termed as a drug discovery. And there are certain situations where you don't find exact individuals for conducting clinical trials. And those things are initially done using these artificial intelligence approaches by simulations and by doing certain laboratory experiment on these machines. And then when you conclude something that yes, things are not that hazardous or things are doable. So looking at first phase experiments or some advanced stage experiments, then finally when you become confident, then these particular products go to live human beings and then conduct the trials. So this is also playing a very important role in drug discovery, and even they can find out the structure of the substance at the molecular level, at the atomic level, and then you can explain how this is going to react to another substance or human body. Now, coming to a very simple problem, which you might have analyzed in your graduate or postgraduate programs, that how all these things come to you. This is a data which talks about heart disease and age of the patient, coronary heart disease and age of 100 patients. And if you look at here, the age of the patient is here, and whether patient has heart disease or patient has no heart disease, the data has been given in the binary form 0 and 1. Now, what is your general idea? That if the age of an individual increases, what is happening to the risk of heart disease? As a common consensus, the risk of heart disease increases. All of you agree that as the age increases, the risk of heart disease increases. And here you see, for all ages, these are the ages of individuals in the third column, and CSD column represents the status whether the individual has heart disease or not, yes or no. And about 100 individuals have presented this kind of data. The age is ranging from 20 years, 40 years, 49 years, 50 years, and so on. Now, if you want to analyze this data and see what is the relationship between the coronary heart disease and age of an individual, then what you have been taught in our statistics, that you will be having this, these are two variables, and let us have a scatter plot and see what is the trend between these two variables. But when I plotted this data, I couldn't see any trend. I found only two straight lines. And if you plot this data, you'll be astonished that there is a straight line on the value 0, referring that there is no heart disease, and there is another straight line on the value 1, irrespective of whatever is the age of the patient. And I was perplexed that how to take a decision on this one. So what is next? So using our statistical intuition, I thought that let us classify this age into various age groups. And I classified this data into various age groups, 20 to 29, and finally through 60 to 69. And I counted the number of individuals in these particular groups. So I had out of those 113 individuals in first group, and similarly about 10 individuals in the last age group. And again, out of these 13 individuals, how many had heart disease and how many were not having heart disease? Again, I classified them into two groups. So I found that in this age group, there were 12 individuals where heart disease was absent, and there was only one person who was having heart disease. Similarly, as I pull down this information at the bottom. And the terminal age group was 60 to 69. There were 10 individuals, and out of these 10 individuals, only 2 were free of heart disease, and 8 had heart disease. Now, if you look at the proportion of individuals having heart disease, in the first group, it is 0.08, 0.2, 0.29, 0.33, and lastly, 0.8, and overall 0.51. So now what this table says, it's just modifying the data into a different form where we were having 2 parallel lines. Now you are getting a sense that as the age groups are increasing, the proportion of individuals suffering with heart disease are increasing, and that conforms with our common belief. What we were told by our common sense, that as people grow older and older, the chance of heart disease increases, and by modifying your data analysis technique, you could discover it from the same data. But if you are using a wrong technique, you will not be able to infer, and that is what we propose, that we should have a proper analysis or a proper tool for using or solving a proper problem. Now, if you plot this data, again on this x-axis you have age in years, and on y-axis you have what is the proportion with coronary heart disease, and you get a rising curve, and which is explaining the phenomena which is happening in reality. And that's the purpose, that when you are using any tool, you find out the reality and you find out what is hidden in the data, and for that you need various kind of tools and techniques. And for risk assessment, the procedure that you use, probably you might have heard about the binary logistic regression. And if you use binary logistic regression to assess that what is the risk of heart disease as the age increases, and you will be using this model, and you will be able to predict that what is the risk of heart disease for a particular individual using this model. And you can predict exactly risk of heart disease for every individual, like I have predicted here in this model. So same thing you can do using any artificial intelligence, that if you have your age and if you have data on heart disease, you try to give this basic data and try to educate or train your system, and later on you can use this system for estimating the risk of heart disease for future patients. So it's not a very big kind of rocket science, but for statisticians, maybe for others. But I think that these things can be learned and practiced gradually, stepwise, and which can be one of the very pertinent areas for biostatisticians to practice artificial intelligence in more meaningful way. So in summary, I will say that artificial intelligence has ability to radically transform the field of healthcare due to its capability and adaptability. Extensive use of artificial intelligence will enable healthcare professionals to provide quality healthcare service to a greater number of people in the much shorter time period, but it's unlikely to replace human physicians or human scientists. So artificial intelligence will also enable the consumer to make more informed choice about their health and well-being in general. So let us keep on celebrating and learning this special day, National Statistics Day. Thank you very much for patience hearing. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for the intriguing address. As a fellow data science enthusiast, it was lovely to know your valuable insights on this topic. And I applaud you for highlighting the scope that statisticians have in the domain of artificial intelligence, provided we work on learning a programming language well. I am sure we all have a lot of self-reflection to do after your talk. Thank you once again for gracing us with your presence. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Thank you.